like a Hellcat.
Hello and welcome back to the channel where once again it's time for another first impressions video, with today's game being another fighting game. This time it's a 3D fighter in the form of Mortal Kombat Armageddon, which saw release in May of 2007 in North America before coming out in June of 2007 in Australia and Europe, after originally being released in October of the previous year on both the PlayStation 2 and the original Xbox.
Foreseen that combatants would one day grow.
Now, I have to be honest, my knowledge of Mortal Kombat games since the ones that came after the 32-bit generation is pretty much non-existent. I know there's been a whole lot of games, but I couldn't tell you the names of all of them, I couldn't tell you which order they came out in, and I couldn't tell you the names of any of the new characters in the series within the past 25 years. So coming into this game was actually a real eye-opener, because I'm really unfamiliar with Mortal Kombat since it's become a 3D fighting game. Like always, I'll be judging it on my first hour and a half of gameplay and talking about what I think it looks like, sounds like, plays like, what kind of content I think it's going to give you, and we will shove it a final grade at the end of the video and decide whether it's a game that I would come back to in the future to play more of. So once you hit the main menu, you'll see you've got Combat, which is your one-on-one fighting, you've got Creative Fighter, you've got Conquest, which is an adventure style mode, Motor Combat, which is like Mario Kart style racing, the Crypt, Extras, Profiles, and Options. Heading into the options, you can change a few things: CPU level, Motor Combat CPU level, you've got a few audio options and video options, and you can check the control pad configuration as well. Like always, I'm going to start with visuals first, and Mortal Kombat Armageddon felt pretty disappointing here overall. I couldn't help shake the feeling that it just had this kind of generic look, and the appeal and the style that I felt older Mortal Kombat games had just didn't seem to translate into this game. I don't know whether it's just me or whether it is genuinely the way that other people feel about this game too. I felt that regardless of what mode you were playing, the combat mode, the conquest mode, or the racing mode, I felt like it didn't feel like a complete game. It almost felt like they've made the one style of game, the one-on-one fighter, thought, this doesn't quite look good enough, and they've tacked on an adventure mode, and then they've tacked on a racing mode as well, and I don't feel visually any areas of the game look particularly good. You have to remember, by the time this game came out, we'd already seen Soul Calibur 2, Soul Calibur 3, Dead or Alive 3, Dead or Alive 4, which was out on the Xbox 360 by the time this game came out, Tekken 4, Tekken 5. All of those fighting games look way better than Mortal Kombat Armageddon. Now, I have done a little bit of research on this game, and apparently this game uses the same game engine as the previous two Mortal Kombat games that came out on the PS2, so that's probably a reason why it does kind of look like it's lacking detail in pretty much every aspect, whether you're on about the character models, the backgrounds, any of the stages in the adventure mode, or the go-kart mode as well. That really does feel like it's been tacked on, I should say, as an absolute last thought. I just feel it just doesn't do it visually for me. I don't really think the moves look truly spectacular. Fatalities definitely don't have the same appeal that they did with the older Mortal Kombat games. It all runs fine and it performs perfectly fine as well, but I just feel it feels somewhat lacking in every area visually. Now, moving on to sound effects and music next. I don't really know what to say here, because the game definitely has a Mortal Kombat feel to it, especially in the sound effects when you're fighting. But the music, I kind of felt it was a bit generic. I felt that a lot of the tracks sounded very familiar, and it was actually hard for me to distinguish one from another. There is quite a bit of music, to be fair, in this game, and the chances are that I didn't experience anywhere near all of it during my playthrough, so I'm going to have to really just sort of sit on the fence in this one. From what I heard, there was nothing, though, truly incredible, but what I'll do is give you a few examples anyway, so you can listen to a few of these tracks for yourselves. Now, moving on to the gameplay next, my feelings here are pretty much the same as they were for the visuals, in the sense that the game doesn't really excel as a 3D adventure game, it doesn't excel as a kart racing game, and it doesn't excel as a one-on-one fighter, and it just feels like a mashup of all three to give you more things to do. In terms of the adventure mode, it's okay. You move your character through the stages, his name is Tavern, and you just beat up people as you go along until you get to bosses, and you progress the story. In fact, this is obviously where the main story part of the game comes into play, and if there was going to be a mode that I would probably play more than any, it probably would be the adventure mode. In all fairness, it is by no means a great playing mode, though. He controls almost too jerky, too spontaneous. He moves around just too quickly and unnaturally, I should say, and it just doesn't feel that satisfying to play, in all fairness. In terms of the one-on-one fighting, you know, there's a lot of fighters to pick from, over 60 fighters, so there's loads of moves to learn, and most of the characters, I should say, have got 2 different styles of fighting, with a weapon and without. A few don't, but that gives you a bit of variety as well. But again, it doesn't feel truly great to play. If I was putting this against other fighting games from this era in just terms of the way it plays and the enjoyment that it brings you, it's not going to match up there with the Soul Caliburs, with the Dead or Alives, the Virtua Fighters, or any of them, or Tekken obviously as well. So it's not a great playing one-on-one fighter. And in terms of the kart racing, you know, it's okay. It's pretty much in there as a distraction, tacked on in terms of gameplay, just like it was visually. It's pretty much in there, I feel, as a multiplayer thing and not really anything else. So by any means, I should say, the game doesn't play bad. I can't really criticize it and say it's a really poor playing game in any area. I just don't feel like any of the modes play well enough to give you that sort of enjoyment that you would probably want. So moving on to the content and lifespan next, and to go with the 3 main modes of play, we've also got a creative fighter mode, which is actually quite in depth. It did surprise me with the amount of things that you can change with your character here. You can also purchase new moves, new pieces of clothing, new scars, things like that to edit your character with. So there's actually quite an in-depth creative fighter, and if that's your thing, it probably will be quite appealing. As well as that, you can actually go into the crypt and view all of the unlockable content within this game, and there really is a lot to unlock. Alternative costumes, music tracks, a few extra characters. It will take a very, very long time. If you wanted to play through this and unlock everything, it's going to take you a substantial amount of time to do so. There is no doubt a lot to do here. You've also got over 60 characters, like I said, as well. So if you wanted to play through the one-player mode with every single character, it is going to take a substantial amount of time. I don't think I can fault this game in terms of its actual content and its potential lifespan. Now, the lifespan's really going to depend on how much enjoyment you get from playing the game. For me personally, I just don't think it plays as good or as addictively as many of the other fighting games from this era on other systems. Now, if you were just talking about the Wii exclusively, obviously there aren't many 3D fighting games to my knowledge on the Wii. I think you might have a few Dragon Ball Z ones, a few Naruto ones, and I think that Tatsunoko vs Capcom game is a 3D fighter as well. But apart from that, I can't really think of any one-on-one fighters that are on the Wii. It didn't get any of the Tekken games, the Soul Calibur games, the Street Fighters. None of those games are available on the Wii, so you are quite limited in your choice. And like I said, the lifespan for the game is really going to depend on how much you enjoy playing it.
A conflict that will destroy us all. These combatants must be dealt with.
I am talking about Taven and Dagon. Must they be involved?
Now, like always, that leaves me with my 2 final questions. Is Mortal Kombat Armageddon a game that I'd come back to and play more of in the future, and what final grade am I going to shove it? Unfortunately, I don't think this game's good enough, whether we're talking about it as a one-on-one fighter or a 3D adventure game or a kart racing game. I just don't think any of the modes play good enough or exciting enough for me to want to play them anymore. Now, if you're a Mortal Kombat fan, that will be a lot different, because you've got over 60 characters to play through the game as, which is going to give you a lot of content and probably quite a lot of enjoyment. In terms of a final grade, I am going to give Mortal Kombat Armageddon a C grade, because it is by no means a terrible game. It just doesn't really appealed to me, and it's mainly got that C grade just due to the amount of content and unlockables that it has got, because it is absolutely stacked in that regard. Now, of course, these are just my thoughts based on my first impressions of playing the game. If you've got your feelings on this game, or if you played it or got it when it came out, leave me a comment down below, and like always, I'll be back in the near future with another video. Goodbye for now.
And became enlightened.